I came home after 2 weeks away to find my dream Lamborghini. $250,000 of blood, sweat, and everything I worked for smashed to pieces in my own driveway. Twisted orange metal, shattered glass. My heart sank. Security cam shows her, Constance Whitmore, HOA president, deliberately ramming it with her Suburban, twice. Then she looks right at the camera and smirks like she just won the lottery. All because my car is too orange for her perfect neighborhood. I earned that car legally, parked it legally, on my property. She destroyed it anyway. No warning, no fine, just pure spite. The rage hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just a car. It was my freedom, my reward for clawing my way out of poverty. What Constance didn't know? I'm a fraud investigator who sent CEOs to prison. She just picked a fight with the wrong guy. What's the most unfair thing an entitled neighbor ever did to you? Drop your story below. I need to know I'm not alone in this madness. Let me back up and tell you who I am because it matters for what comes next. My name's Diesel Hartwell, and that destroyed Lamborghini wasn't some trust fund toy. I grew up in Detroit where my mom worked double shifts at the Ford plant just to keep the lights on. When she got cancer 3 years ago, I spent every penny I had on her treatment. The chemo, the specialists, the experimental drugs insurance wouldn't cover. I built my cybersecurity company from scratch. Started in Mom's basement, hunting corporate fraudsters while she recovered upstairs. Every rejected proposal, every sleepless night, every small victory, it all led to that moment when I could finally afford something beautiful. The Huracan's V10 engine purring to life became my morning meditation. The smell of rich leather mixed with Mom's coffee brewing downstairs. Pure heaven. The satisfying crunch of gravel under Pirelli tires as I pulled into Willowbrook Estates. This was success. This was freedom. Then I met Constance Whitmore, and my American dream hit a brick wall named Karen. Picture a woman who inherited daddy's plumbing fortune but acts like she founded Microsoft. 58, blonde highlights that cost more than most people's rent, married to Harold, some investment banker who's been neutered into submission. Constance has ruled our HOA for 8 years because nobody else wants to deal with her particular flavor of suburban fascism. Her house? Biggest on Maple Street, naturally, complete with passive-aggressive lawn signs, quiet zone, respect your neighbors, and my personal favorite, community standards matter. Translation, I decide what's acceptable around here. The trouble started week 1. I'm heading to work at 6 a.m., early but not unreasonable, when my doorbell rings. There's Constance in designer workout gear, clutching a manila folder like it contains nuclear launch codes. We need to discuss your vehicle. No hello, no welcome to the neighborhood, just straight to business. My vehicle? I'm still half asleep, coffee mug in hand. She opens her folder with the precision of a funeral director. HOA Bylaw 47C. All vehicles must maintain subdued, tasteful colors appropriate to our community aesthetic. I glance at my gorgeous Arancio Borealis orange paint gleaming in the sunrise. It's orange. Precisely. Her smile could freeze Florida. We maintain certain standards here, Mr. Hartwell. I'm sure someone of your background understands the importance of fitting in. The way she spat background made my coffee taste bitter, like she'd already profiled me based on my Detroit plates and decided I didn't belong. When was this rule added? 6 months ago. Unanimous board approval. That night, I did what I do best, detective work. Turns out the previous offensive vehicle belonged to Marcus Thompson, a black firefighter who'd moved out rather than fight City Hall. His crime? An orange Mustang. Funny how these aesthetic standards always target the same people. The HOA documents felt rough as sandpaper between my fingers. The stench of institutional racism was stronger than week-old fish. But unlike Marcus, I wasn't going anywhere. I was a fraud investigator who'd built his career exposing exactly this kind of corruption. The bylaw change, posted in tiny print in the community newsletter, buried between casserole recipes and garage sale ads. Technically legal but ethically bankrupt. Classic move from someone who thinks rules are weapons. I installed security cameras the next day. Front, back, sides, cloud backup, the full corporate espionage package. My fraud cases taught me rule number 1. Document everything, because bullies always escalate. Sure enough, 2 days later, I found an anonymous noise complaint in my mailbox. Excessive engine noise during quiet hours. My Lambo is bone stock. No mods, no loud exhaust. But facts don't matter to people drunk on petty power. Constance thought she was dealing with another pushover neighbor who'd fold under pressure. Instead, she'd just declared war on someone who destroys corrupt systems professionally. Game on, princess. Constance moved fast. 3 days after our little sidewalk standoff, I get a certified letter announcing an emergency HOA board meeting about my ongoing violations. Emergency? My car had been parked legally in my driveway for exactly 1 week. The meeting was Thursday night at Constance's house, naturally. Her turf, her rules, her psychological warfare. I showed up at 7 p.m. sharp to find the holy trinity of suburban tyranny assembled around her dining room table. Constance looked like she was chairing a war crimes tribunal. Martha Kowalski, retired third-grade teacher turned professional busybody, clutched a notepad like she was documenting genocide. Vernon Buckley, insurance adjuster with the charisma of damp toast, nodded along to whatever kept him breathing. The overpowering smell of vanilla candles couldn't mask what this really was, a kangaroo court. Mr. Hartwell, Constance purred, sliding a manila folder across her polished mahogany table with the precision of a chess master. We have documented evidence of multiple violations. I opened the folder to find photos of my Lamborghini. Normal photos, except they'd been shot from bizarre angles to make it look like I was blocking the sidewalk. In one picture, they'd actually moved garbage cans closer to my car to fake an obstruction. Amateur hour photography meets professional-grade deception. This vehicle creates visual disruption, Martha recited from her notes like she was reading a grocery list. The color is aggressive. Aggressive? I bit back a laugh. Ma'am, it's Arancio Borealis. That's Italian for orange. We don't need foreign language lessons, Constance snapped, her mask slipping for half a second. The board votes $500 daily until compliance. $500 per day for parking my legally owned vehicle on my own property. But here's where my detective background kicked in, and where Constance made her first fatal mistake. Interesting. Can I see the meeting minutes from this vote? Vernon's insurance adjuster face went pale. Martha suddenly discovered her notepad was absolutely fascinating. The vote just occurred, Constance said smoothly. Right now. Ah. I pulled out my phone, already loaded with Georgia HOA regulations from my earlier research. Years of corporate fraud cases had taught me that bullies always cut corners on procedure. Problem is, state law requires 48 hours advance notice for any assessment changes. Tonight's meeting was announced Monday. That's 72 hours, but you're missing the procedural requirements. The grandfather clock in her foyer suddenly sounded deafening in the silence. Constance's Botox couldn't hide the panic creeping into her eyes. She'd rushed to crush me and walked straight into a legal trap. Emergency meetings, I continued, enjoying every syllable, can only address genuine emergencies. Quote, immediate threats to property or resident safety. Unless orange paint causes heart attacks, my car doesn't qualify. Vernon actually chuckled, then covered it with the world's most obvious fake cough. Even Martha looked uncomfortable, probably remembering her teaching days when she had to follow actual rules. You're being deliberately obstinate, Constance hissed through gritted teeth. I'm being accurate. There's a difference. I left them sitting there in their vanilla-scented defeat and went home to draft my complaint to the county clerk. Improper notice, invalid vote, procedural violations. I had enough ammunition to blow up their little power play. Back in Detroit, we had a saying, if you're going to come at the king, you better not miss. Constance had not only missed, she'd shot herself in the foot. Friday morning brought Harold to my driveway, looking like a man facing his own execution. Golf clothes, compression socks, the defeated posture of someone who'd been married into submission. His Titleist cap sat crooked on his head like his whole life. Diesel, can I call you Diesel? Listen, neighbor to neighbor, maybe we work something out here. Through my kitchen window, I could see Constance stationed at her own window like a sniper in a watchtower, arms crossed, monitoring her husband's diplomatic mission. What kind of arrangement, Harold? Well, garage parking. Keep the car out of sight. Constance feels strongly about community image. The way he said it, like he was reading from a script she'd written in crayon. His golf spikes scraped against my concrete driveway, the sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Here stood a millionaire investment banker, reduced to being his wife's errand boy. "Harold, I park where I want on my own property." That's literally what property ownership means. His shoulders collapsed like a deflated balloon. "She won't let this go." Neither will I. That weekend, I started building what every good investigator knows is essential: the paper trail. Every dirty look, every passive-aggressive comment, every time Constance walked past my house making the face people make when they step in dog shit. Timeline, documentation, cross-referenced with state regulations. Because this was never about my car. This was about power, control, and a woman who'd spent 58 years never hearing the word no. She was about to get a PhD in why that was a problem. Constance's next move came Tuesday morning while I was in Atlanta closing a cybersecurity contract. My phone buzzed during the client presentation. Unknown number, gravelly voice cutting through corporate bullshit. "Son, you better get home. Some jackass is trying to steal your car." Jasper Martinez, my 70-year-old across-the-street neighbor, retired Army sergeant who'd seen enough wars to recognize when one was starting in his own neighborhood. I excused myself and called the towing company. The board dispatcher told me they had HOA authorization to remove an abandoned vehicle from Willowbrook Estates. Abandoned? My car had been sitting for exactly 24 hours. I broke every speed limit getting home, my rental Camry screaming like it was being tortured. The scene waiting for me was pure suburban theater, massive tow truck idling in my driveway, diesel fumes choking the air, Constance positioned on the sidewalk like a general reviewing her conquest, and Jasper blocking the driver's path with his own pickup truck. "Ma'am, I already told you 3 times, the tow truck driver was saying, sweat pouring down his face despite the morning chill. "I can't take a vehicle without proper documentation." Young Jasper spotted me and grinned like Christmas morning. This old soldier had been watching Constance terrorize the neighborhood for years, just waiting for someone with the balls to fight back. "There's the owner now," Jasper announced. "Funny how abandoned vehicles have owners who show up when you call them." Constance's face cycled through the color spectrum before settling on furious crimson. "Mr. Hartwell, your vehicle has remained stationary for over 24 hours. That constitutes abandonment under emergency protocols." "Show me the paperwork," I told the driver. He handed me a work order signed by C. Whitmore, HOA president, claiming my car was blocking critical emergency access routes. Complete fiction. My Lamborghini sat squarely in my own driveway, nowhere near any emergency route. But then, I noticed something beautiful. The letterhead read Whitmore Recovery Services. Same last name. Interesting coincidence. I pulled out my phone and ran a quick business license search while Constance and the driver argued. Years of corporate fraud investigation had taught me that family corruption usually hides in plain sight. Jackpot. Owner, Harold Whitmore. Business address, same as Constance's house. This wasn't just HOA abuse. This was a family business model. Create fake emergencies. Call husband's towing company. Collect fees from the community budget. Brilliant in its simplicity, stupid in its obviousness. "Harold's company, huh?" I said, showing Constance my phone screen. "Amazing how emergencies always seem to require your husband's specific services." The tow truck driver's eyes went wide as the scam hit him. "Ma'am, I think there's been some kind of mistake here. I'm gonna head out." He couldn't get out of my driveway fast enough, leaving Constance standing there like a deflated balloon animal. "This conversation isn't finished," she snarled before click-clacking back to her house in her designer sneakers, each step echoing her rage. Jasper waited until she disappeared before exploding into laughter that probably violated her noise ordinances. "Son, that witch has been terrorizing this street for 8 years. Nobody's ever made her look that stupid before." "8 years of what?" "Come have a beer. You need to understand what you're really fighting." That evening on Jasper's back porch, bourbon burning my throat and the truth burning my ears, I learned about Constance's greatest hits. The Johnsons, harassed out because their teenagers played basketball after 6 p.m. The Patel family, whose exotic cooking odors somehow violated community standards. Marcus Thompson and his orange Mustang. The Hernandez family, whose crime was speaking Spanish in their own backyard. "She's got a system," Jasper explained. ice cubes clinking in his glass like a funeral bell. Target anyone who doesn't match her vision of suburban paradise. Make their lives hell until they pack up and leave. The pattern was clearer than fingerprints on a murder weapon. This wasn't random petty tyranny. This was systematic ethnic and economic cleansing with an HOA stamp of approval. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? Most people just want quiet lives. Fighting her means lawyers, stress, money bleeding out your wallet. Easier to move somewhere else and let her win. But I wasn't most people. I was a fraud investigator who destroyed Fortune 500 executives for exactly this kind of corruption. Constance just wore yoga pants instead of power suits. That night, I dove into Harold's business records like a shark smelling blood. His towing company had logged 17 emergency calls from our HOA in 2 years, all targeting residents Constance had marked for elimination. Each call generated a $200 response fee, even when no actual towing occurred. Friday brought the real declaration of war. Code enforcement officer in my driveway looking confused as hell. "Sir, are you operating an illegal data center from this residence?" I showed him my data center, 1 laptop, a printer, and a coffee maker. He apologized for the waste of time, but mentioned the complaint had been very detailed about commercial-grade server equipment and suspicious electronic activity. Constance was throwing everything at the wall, hoping something would stick. She'd just revealed exactly how desperate she was becoming. Constance went full psycho the following Monday. I'm savoring my first cup of coffee when my doorbell explodes at 7 a.m. sharp. City official this time, clipboard in hand, wearing the defeated expression of a man who'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. Code enforcement. Someone reported you're running an illegal data center operation. A what now? Complainant claims you've got commercial server equipment, industrial cooling systems, multiple high-speed internet lines. Said the electromagnetic interference is disrupting their pacemaker. I nearly spit coffee across my porch. Pacemaker interference? I led him inside to witness my data center, 1 Dell laptop, a basic printer, and my Keurig coffee maker on a card table. The most high-tech thing was my electric toothbrush charger. Jesus Christ, the officer muttered, scribbling notes. Ma'am made it sound like you were mining Bitcoin for the Russian mafia. I'm real sorry about this. But as he packed up his clipboard, he dropped something that made my blood freeze. Whoever called knew way too much about cybersecurity operations, used technical terms I had to look up, almost like they'd been researching your specific business. Constance hadn't just been watching me, she'd been studying me like a lab rat. That afternoon brought an even bigger shock. I found 3 neighbors huddled in my driveway like refugees seeking asylum. Martha Tessa from 2 houses down, Bob Martinez, the contractor, and, holy shit, Vernon from the HOA board itself. "We need to talk," Vernon whispered, glancing toward Constance's house like she might have sniper rifles trained on us. "Not here. Too exposed." We retreated to my back patio, hidden from her kitchen window command center. The smell of Bob's work boots mixed with Martha's nervous perfume created an atmosphere of pure dread. "She's been asking questions," Martha said, her retired nurse's training making her check over her shoulder every few seconds. "Personal questions about your family, your income, where you came from." "Asked me to dig up dirt on your contractor licenses," Bob added, his calloused hands shaking slightly. "Wanted to know if you'd ever been cited for code violations." Vernon delivered the knockout punch. "I saw her yesterday morning with a telephoto camera lens photographing your house from her upstairs window. She's got a whole filing system about you." My coffee mug suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. Professional stalking, documentation, systematic harassment elevated to criminal behavior. "There's a file," Vernon continued, his insurance background making him precise about details. "Thick manila folder labeled with your name, photos, printed articles about your business, what looked like financial records. She's treating you like a goddamn criminal investigation." The next morning brought Constance's declaration of war, delivered with surgical precision. Handwritten note tucked under my windshield wiper, purple ink on cream-colored stationery that probably cost more per sheet than most people's lunch. "Your kind doesn't belong in Willowbrook Estates. This community maintains certain standards that people like you will never understand. Sell your property and relocate somewhere more appropriate, or discover how unpleasant life can become for you and anyone foolish enough to associate with you. Some wars aren't worth fighting when you're guaranteed to lose." The expensive paper felt like poison between my fingers. every word carefully chosen for maximum psychological impact. This wasn't random racism, this was calculated ethnic intimidation from someone who'd perfected the art. I photographed the letter with timestamp metadata, filed copies with local police as evidence of hate crime intimidation, and added it to my rapidly expanding case file. Years of corporate investigations had taught me that amateur criminals always document their own crimes, eventually. Thursday brought Jasper shuffling across the street with his morning bourbon-laced coffee and the grim determination of someone ready to spill 30 years of neighborhood secrets. "Time you learned what you're really fighting," he said, easing into my patio chair like an old general preparing to brief his troops. "Constance doesn't just harass people, she eliminates them, systematically." He laid out her operational pattern with military precision. Phase 1. Target selection. Identify residents who threaten her vision of suburban white paradise. Phase 2. Intelligence gathering. Research backgrounds, vulnerabilities, family situations. Phase 3. Pressure campaign. Weaponize HOA authority for systematic harassment. Phase 4. Escalation, personal threats, property sabotage, social isolation. Phase 5. Victory. Target surrenders and moves away. The Patel family lasted 8 months. She got them with cooking odor violations and anonymous complaints about loud foreign music. The Hernandez family made it 6 months before constant noise citations broke them down. Marcus Thompson, 4 months. She went full Nazi on him. Left pamphlets about maintaining property values on his car, started rumors about his suspicious visitors, made his teenage daughter cry walking to school. The morning air felt arctic as the scope of her ethnic cleansing operation crystallized. 4 families destroyed, countless others intimidated into silence, a neighborhood systematically purged of anyone who didn't match her master race fantasies. "But here's what's different," Jasper continued, his old warrior eyes gleaming with anticipation. "You're the first target who fights back. She's never faced someone who knows how to investigate, document evidence, and build federal cases. She's used to intimidating normal people who just want peaceful lives." I stared at my Lamborghini, then at Constance's house where her silhouette lurked behind expensive curtains. She just picked a fight with the wrong fucking guy. That weekend, while Constance was probably planning my next torture session, I did what fraud investigators do when bullies piss us off. I followed the money trail straight to hell. Corporate fraud cases taught me one sacred truth. Power-drunk assholes always get greedy. They can't just abuse authority, they have to profit from it. So I started digging into our HOA's financial records, something most people don't realize are public documents in Georgia. Amazing what you can learn when you know which rocks to kick over. What I discovered made my coffee taste like battery acid. Willowbrook Estates HOA had hemorrhaged $127,000 for landscape maintenance and community improvements over 3 years. Funny thing, I'd walked every street in our neighborhood. No new landscaping, no improvements. Same pathetic flower beds, same cracked sidewalks, same broken streetlight that's been strobing like a disco ball since Obama was president. So where the hell did $127,000 vanish to? I ran the payment records through my forensic accounting software, the same program that sent Fortune 500 executives to federal vacation camps. Every check flowed to Whitmore Landscaping Solutions, LLC, a company sharing the exact address as Constance and Harold's house. The smell of corruption was stronger than week-old fish. Harold's business license told the rest of the story. Filed exactly 6 months after Constance seized the HOA throne. 0 employees, no commercial vehicle registrations, no equipment permits. This wasn't a landscaping company, it was a money laundering operation disguised as yard work. But the real gut punch came when I analyzed the payment timeline. Every major payout to Whitmore Landscaping happened within 2 weeks of Constance targeting a new victim. Patel family harassment, $8,000 payment for aromatic plant remediation 14 days later. Marcus Thompson's orange Mustang crisis, $12,000 for aesthetic harmony consultation. She wasn't just stealing our money, she was using it to fund her personal ethnic cleansing campaigns. That evening I conducted surveillance on Harold's landscaping empire. His garage contained 1 rusted push mower, some garden hoses, and what appeared to be a lawnmower from the Carter administration. For a company billing $40 grand annually, they'd invested about $200 in equipment. Monday brought my formal records request. Legally, they had 10 days to comply. Harold's invoices read like science fiction. Soil pH optimization and mineral enhancement, $3,000. Specialized root system aeration therapy, $5,000. Advanced moisture retention consultation, $4,500. Pure creative writing, expensive creative writing. Every invoice bore Constance's signature approval, creating a gorgeous conflict of interest violation. Board members can't authorize payments to family businesses without full disclosure and membership votes. She'd been rubber stamping her husband's fantasy invoices for 3 years. Then I found the smoking gun that transformed this from unethical to criminal. Harold's company had billed for work during periods when credit card records showed them both vacationing in Bermuda. Hard to install $6,000 worth of indigenous plant species when you're sipping rum runners on a Caribbean beach. This was systematic, premeditated theft from every homeowner who trusted them with our community's future. I sat in my office that night, staring at filing cabinets stuffed with evidence that could obliterate them both. Financial fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, breach of fiduciary duty, enough federal charges to make their lawyers weep. I could force the sale of their McMansion, recover every stolen penny, and watch them trade designer clothes for orange jumpsuits. But looking out at my neighborhood, the place I'd sacrificed everything to afford, I realized something profound. This transcended personal revenge. This was about justice for every terrorized family, every stolen dollar, every resident too frightened to fight institutional corruption. Constance believed she was bulletproof, protected by position, insulated by privilege, convinced that ordinary people lacked resources to challenge suburban royalty. She was about to learn what happens when entitled sociopaths pick fights with professional system breakers. Time to burn her empire to the ground. Monday morning, I called the one person who understood warfare as well as I understood fraud, Jasper Martinez, my 70-year-old strategic advisor and neighborhood intelligence chief. "We need to talk strategy," I told him, coffee steam curling between us like battle smoke. "But not here. Too many enemy sight lines." Jasper's scarred face split into a predator's grin. "Son, you're finally thinking like a soldier. My garage, 30 minutes. Time to plan some beautiful destruction." His garage reeked of motor oil and decades of suppressed rage. We spread my evidence across his workbench like generals preparing for Normandy. Financial records, harassment timelines, legal documentation, photographic proof of Constance's systematic theft and terrorism. "Jesus Christ on a cracker," Jasper breathed, studying Harold's fantasy invoices. "She's been ass-fucking this neighborhood for years." "Gets better. I found a buried provision in our HOA charter. Homeowners can force emergency meetings with 30% petition signatures. That's 18 names out of 60 houses. Public execution, maximum humiliation factor." His old warrior eyes gleamed with anticipation. She'll never see it coming. Step 1 required recruiting allies without triggering Constance's surveillance network. We mapped households she'd terrorized, plenty of scared, angry residents just waiting for someone with enough spine to throw the first punch. Mrs. Tessa, whose cultural garden proposal Constance had rejected for aesthetic disruption. Bob Martinez, whose tool shed permit she'd delayed for 8 months out of pure spite. Sarah Williams, whose crime was being a single mom whose kids' toys somehow violated community harmony standards. "These people have been praying for a champion," Jasper explained, his military mind already calculating victory scenarios. "They just needed someone crazy enough to declare war first." Step 2. Legal weaponry. I contacted Rebecca Torres, an attorney who specialized in HOA corruption cases and had a reputation for eating corrupt board members alive. Over lunch at a restaurant safely distant from enemy territory, she reviewed my evidence with the hungry expression of a shark tasting blood. "With financial fraud this blatant, you can demand complete forensic audits, force board removal, even trigger criminal investigations," she said, practically salivating over Harold's fake invoices. "Georgia law is very clear about fiduciary duty violations. How fast can we move? Normal process, 60 days minimum, but there's a nuclear option if you're feeling theatrical." She outlined the beautiful legal trap. Emergency homeowner meetings could be called with 24 hours notice for immediate threats to community welfare. Systematic embezzlement definitely qualified, and board members couldn't skip emergency meetings without automatically forfeiting their positions. Best part? They have to show up and face their accusers publicly. No lawyers, no prepared statements, just raw confrontation. Step 3 demanded psychological warfare worthy of Sun Tzu himself. I needed Constance so obsessed with my car that she'd miss the revolution building under her nose. That evening, I positioned my Lamborghini like a middle finger aimed directly at her kitchen window, dead center of my driveway, angled so the orange paint blazed like a sunset beacon. Then I started my signature collection campaign using the car as perfect misdirection. The strategy worked like magic. While Constance fumed about my aggressive display, I quietly gathered signatures from every household with a grudge against her reign of terror. Each conversation revealed fresh horrors, fake violations, intimidation campaigns, financial irregularities people had noticed, but been too frightened to report. Mrs. Tessa signed while pressing homemade cookies into my hands. Finally, someone brave enough to fight that witch. Bob Martinez signed while detailing how Constance's permit delays had cost him a $15,000 construction contract. Sarah Williams signed through tears, explaining how her 8-year-old daughter asked why the scary lady hated their family. By Thursday, I had 26 signatures, enough to trigger our legal nuclear option. Step 4, the presentation. Years of corporate fraud cases had taught me that visual evidence destroys denial faster than logic. I built a forensic slideshow that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy. Timeline correlations between harassment campaigns and financial theft, photographic evidence of Harold's non-existent landscaping empire, cost analysis proving their invoices were pure fiction. This needs to be courtroom quality, Rebecca advised during our final review. Assume she'll try everything to discredit your evidence. Let her try. I've got 3 years of documentation, expert contractor testimony, and forensic accounting that could survive Supreme Court scrutiny. Step 5, trap activation. Saturday, 2 p.m., Community Center. Maximum seating for maximum witnesses. The agenda was elegantly simple: emergency financial review and board accountability assessment. Friday night, I mailed formal notices to every homeowner via certified delivery, including evidence summaries that would give Constance her first taste of impending doom. No ambush tactics, no surprises, just cold, hard facts delivered with surgical precision. Then I waited for her to receive her invitation to hell. The anticipation tasted sweeter than aged whiskey. Saturday was going to be absolutely fucking beautiful. Constance's meltdown began Saturday morning at 6 a.m. sharp, her panicked voice shrieking through my phone like a smoke alarm with dying batteries. Mr. Hartwell, I'm calling an emergency board meeting to address your campaign of neighborhood terrorism. Terrorism? I nearly choked on my coffee. Collecting legal petition signatures is terrorism now? You've been spreading malicious lies about HOA finances. That's defamation, and my attorney is preparing a lawsuit that will destroy you financially. The desperation bleeding through her voice tasted like pure victory. She was terrified, and terrified people make beautiful mistakes. Constance, everything in my petition comes from public records, your husband's invoices, payment authorizations bearing your signature. Math isn't defamation. Dead silence except for her ragged breathing. When she finally spoke, her voice had dropped to a whisper somehow more chilling than screaming. Cancel this meeting, Diesel. You're playing with forces beyond your comprehension. Click. The sweet sound of a cornered predator realizing she'd been outmaneuvered by her intended prey. By noon, Constance was moving through the neighborhood like a woman possessed, speed walking between houses with military precision, clipboard clutched like a weapon. I watched from my kitchen window as she attempted damage control, probably threatening, bribing, or begging my petition signers to withdraw their support. The acrid smell of her desperation drifted through my open windows stronger than garbage day. At 12:45 p.m., 15 minutes before our showdown, she deployed her nuclear option. My doorbell exploded with aggressive authority. 2 police officers flanked a nervous code enforcement supervisor who looked like he'd rather be getting root canal surgery. Sir, we received complaints about threatening behavior toward elderly residents, announced Sergeant Rodriguez, a weathered cop whose expression screamed administrative bullshit duty. Threatening behavior? Complainant alleges door-to-door intimidation, threats about property values, spreading false financial information to create panic among vulnerable seniors. I invited them inside to examine my terrorism. 26 neighbor signatures on a petition requesting legal financial review. No threats, no intimidation, just residents exercising constitutional rights Constance apparently found threatening. Sir, Rodriguez muttered after reviewing everything, this is civil HOA business. We can't prevent legal community meetings. but the code enforcement supervisor shifted nervously. "Ma'am mentioned missed zoning violations regarding your business operations. Said we might have overlooked commercial activity." Constance's desperation play revealed. If she couldn't stop the meeting legally, she'd destroy my credibility by painting me as a law-breaking business operator. "Inspect away," I said, leading them to my terrifying commercial operation. 1 laptop, 1 printer, 1 folding table. The supervisor's mortification was visible from orbit. "Sir, I sincerely apologize. Complainant described industrial-scale operations. This is a desk." After they fled in embarrassment, I discovered Vernon Buckley lurking near my mailbox like a guilty teenager, sweat staining his golf shirt despite 40-degree weather. "She's completely lost her shit," he whispered, glancing around like Constance might have snipers positioned on rooftops, making threats, calling in favors, promising magical neighborhood improvements if people skip your meeting. "I've been documenting everything for 3 years, Vernon continued, producing a thick manila envelope from his golf bag. "Every questionable invoice I was forced to approve, every time she threatened my board position for asking questions. I kept copies for protection." The envelope contained liquid gold, email chains where Vernon questioned suspicious payments and Constance shut him down with intimidation tactics, written proof of financial irregularities and systematic board manipulation. Why help me now? Because I'm tired of being her neutered lapdog, and because watching families flee this neighborhood makes me sick. His insurance adjuster training had been screaming fraud for years, but Constance's psychological warfare had kept him terrified into silence. At 1:30 p.m., my attorney called with delicious news. "Constance just attempted getting a restraining order against your meeting," Rebecca Torres laughed. "Claimed you're orchestrating a criminal conspiracy to destroy her reputation through coordinated character assassination." "How'd that work out?" "Judge reviewed your evidence packet and told her to stop wasting judicial resources. Said if accusations are false, she can defend herself publicly. If they're true, she needs a criminal defense attorney immediately." The anticipation was intoxicating as aged whiskey. "She's also retained Benjamin Ashworth." I recognize that name. Atlanta's most expensive HOA defense lawyer. The kind you hired when guilt was certain and you had serious money to burn fighting inevitable consequences. "What's his retainer?" $20,000 minimum. Money she shouldn't possess unless she's been embezzling more than we discovered. 1:50 p.m. 10 minutes until Constance faced her community reckoning. The community center parking lot was filling rapidly. Cars I recognized, faces I'd seen during signature collection, neighbors who'd suffered years of her systematic terrorism finally gathering for revolution. The smell of justice was sweeter than Sunday morning bacon. Time for Constance Whitmore's public execution. The community center parking lot looked like a neighborhood uprising. Cars filled every space, with residents I'd never seen before walking toward the building with the grim determination of people finally ready to fight back. The air crackled with 8 years of suppressed rage. Inside, folding chairs were arranged in neat rows facing a small stage where Constance would soon face her firing squad. Mrs. Tessa had arrived early to claim front row seats, her homemade cookies forgotten as she clutched Vernon's damning evidence envelope. Bob Martinez sat with his contractor buddies, witnesses to Constance's permit terrorism. Sarah Williams held her 8-year-old daughter's hand, both of them ready to watch the monster get slayed. At exactly 2 p.m., Constance swept through the doors like she was attending her own coronation instead of her execution. She'd dressed for battle in a power suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, flanked by her $20,000 lawyer Benjamin Ashworth, a silver-haired shark whose reputation for defending hopeless cases preceded him like expensive cologne. Harold shuffled behind them, looking like a man walking to the electric chair. The poor bastard probably had no idea how deep his wife had buried them both. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing at the makeshift podium with my laptop connected to a projector screen, "thank you for exercising your legal rights as homeowners. Today we're reviewing financial irregularities that affect every person in this room." Constance shot to her feet like a rocket. "This is a kangaroo court organized by a disgruntled resident who—" "Mrs. Whitmore," Ashworth hissed, grabbing her arm, "sit down and let me handle this." But Constance was beyond lawyerly control. 8 years of unchallenged power had made her believe she was untouchable, and watching her kingdom crumble was breaking her brain in real time. This man has been harassing residents, spreading lies, intimidating elderly neighbors. "Actually," interrupted Mrs. Patterson, standing with her walker, He knocked politely and explained everything very clearly. "Unlike you, dear, who threatened to fine me for my rose bushes last week." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Constance's face cycled through several shades of purple. I clicked to my first slide, a timeline showing $127,000 in payments to Whitmore Landscaping Solutions. These are public HOA financial records, every payment authorized by the board and signed by Mrs. Whitmore personally. Ashworth was frantically scribbling notes, probably calculating how fucked his clients were. "This company," I continued, showing Harold's business registration, "shares the same address as the Whitmore residence. No employees, no equipment permits, no commercial vehicle registrations." Harold was slumping deeper into his chair with each revelation, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Mini twist. Then Vernon stood up, his insurance adjuster training finally overriding years of intimidation. "I have documented evidence of Mrs. Whitmore threatening board members who questioned these payments." He read from his emails. Constance's actual words threatening to remove him from the board for undermining community leadership whenever he questioned Harold's invoices. The room erupted in angry murmurs. "That's taken out of context," Constance shrieked, but her lawyer was already shaking his head in defeat. I showed photographs of Harold's landscaping equipment, one rusty mower in their garage, compared to invoices billing $40,000 annually for professional services. Soil pH optimization therapy, $3,000. Advanced root aeration consultation, $5,000. Moisture retention engineering, $4,500. The crowd was laughing now, bitter laughter mixed with rage at being robbed for years. But the knockout punch came when I displayed credit card records showing the Whitmores vacationing in Bermuda during periods when Harold's company was supposedly installing $6,000 worth of indigenous plant species. "Hard to landscape from a beach resort," I said. The room exploded in angry shouts. Constance made her final desperate play. "This is all fabricated. He's a cybercriminal who forged these documents to—" "Ma'am," Sergeant Rodriguez interrupted from the back of the room, "those are public records. You can verify them yourself through the county clerk." Ashworth leaned over and whispered urgently in Constance's ear, probably explaining that she was confessing to additional crimes by claiming the documents were forged. Then Jasper stood up, his old soldier's voice cutting through the chaos. "How many families did you force out of this neighborhood, Constance? How many kids had to change schools because you made their parents' lives hell?" The room went deadly quiet. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about justice for every family she'd terrorized. "The Patels," someone called out. "The Hernandez family," another voice added. "Marcus Thompson and his daughter. The Johnsons." Each name hit Constance like a physical blow. Her empire of fear was crumbling in front of the entire community she'd ruled through intimidation. Harold finally broke his silence. "Connie, we need to leave. Now." But it was too late for escape. The people she'd terrorized for 8 years were finally fighting back, and there was nowhere left to run. The explosion came when Sarah Williams stood up, her 8-year-old daughter Emma clinging to her hand like a lifeline. "You made my little girl cry," Sarah said, her voice shaking with maternal fury. "She asked me why the scary lady hated us for having colorful toys in our own backyard." The room went nuclear. 8 years of suppressed rage detonated simultaneously as neighbor after neighbor rose to share their horror stories. Mrs. Tessa described fake violations for excessive gardening. Bob Martinez detailed permit delays that cost him $15,000 in lost contracts. The elderly Andersons revealed harassment over their grandson's weekend visits being too disruptive. Constance sat frozen as her victims finally found their voices, her power suit wilting like a deflated balloon. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she screamed, desperation making her voice crack. "He's turned you all against me with lies and—" That's when the back doors opened and Channel 7 News walked in. I hadn't called them. Someone else had, probably Mrs. Tessa, who'd mentioned her daughter worked in media. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Jessica Park, moved through the crowd with her cameraman like a shark smelling blood. "We received reports of a community uprising against alleged HOA corruption," Jessica announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "Can someone explain what's happening here?" Constance's face went from purple to gray. Being humiliated in front of neighbors was one thing. Being exposed on evening news was career suicide. "This is a private meeting," Ashworth objected, but Jessica smiled with predatory sweetness. The smell of gymnasium floor wax and anticipation filled the air as volunteers set up hundreds of folding chairs that squeaked like excited mice. Professional audio equipment ensured everything would be recorded with federal court admissibility, while media satellite trucks lined the street outside like a small-town presidential visit. Harold's final revelation came Thursday night, a recorded phone call where Delilah admitted to milking these sheep for everything they've got, while using racial slurs about Rosa and explicit threats against me. The recording also captured her discussing criminal intent beyond mere mismanagement, proof of deliberate fraud that would make federal juries convict without hesitation. Friday brought the pre-meeting chaos. Delilah's criminal defense lawyer advised her not to attend, advice she ignored with the arrogance that had characterized her entire criminal career. "People like you," she snarled at me, "with your flashy cars and your attitude, you think you can just move in and change everything? This neighborhood was perfect before what?" Jasper interrupted, his military bearing making him tower over her seated form. "Before you drove out every family that didn't match your master race fantasies?" The words master race hit like a nuclear bomb. Even Ashworth was backing away from his client now. Jessica Park moved closer with her microphone. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you saying you've intentionally driven minority families from this neighborhood?" "I maintain community standards," Constance screamed. "Property values, aesthetic harmony. These people don't understand." "Which people?" Jessica pressed. Constance's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. She'd just confessed to housing discrimination on live television. That's when the police arrived. Not Rodriguez this time, but detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit. Someone had forwarded my evidence package to the State Attorney General's office. "Mrs. Whitmore," Detective Morrison announced, "we have a warrant to search your residence regarding allegations of embezzlement and fraud." The community center erupted. Neighbors were cheering, crying, hugging each other as 8 years of oppression finally ended. Harold stood up slowly, his investment banker training finally kicking in. "Officers, I'd like to cooperate fully. My wife has been handling all the HOA finances." Constance turned on him like a rabid animal. "You coward! You signed those invoices. You took the money. Because you told me it was legal. You said the board approved everything." Their marriage was imploding on live television, taking their criminal conspiracy down with it, but I wasn't done. This moment needed the perfect mic drop. "Before you arrest her," I said, addressing Detective Morrison while the camera rolled, "the community should know what I'm doing with my insurance settlement from my destroyed car." The room quieted, waiting. "I'm donating every penny to establish the Willowbrook Justice Scholarship, supporting law students who want to fight HOA corruption and housing discrimination. Because this neighborhood belongs to everyone, not just people who look like Constance Whitmore." The cheers were deafening. Mrs. Tessa was sobbing happy tears. Sarah Williams was hugging her daughter, whispering that the scary lady couldn't hurt them anymore. Constance was led away in handcuffs, her designer heels clicking one final time across the community center floor. As the crowd dispersed, neighbors lingered to shake my hand, share their stories, and thank me for giving them their neighborhood back. Justice tasted sweeter than anything I'd ever experienced. 6 months later, I'm standing in my driveway next to my new Lamborghini Huracan Evo, same gorgeous orange paint. But this one means something different. This one represents a community that fought back and won. The criminal trial was swift and brutal. Constance got 18 months federal prison for embezzlement and conspiracy. Harold received probation and community service after cooperating fully. Turns out he'd been just as terrorized by his wife as the rest of us, trapped in a marriage that had become his personal prison. The HOA recovered every stolen penny through asset forfeiture. Their McMansion sold at auction, with proceeds funding neighborhood improvements we'd actually wanted for years. The broken streetlight finally got fixed. New playground equipment appeared where Harold's imaginary landscaping company claimed to have worked. Mrs. Tessa's cultural garden proposal was approved unanimously. Jasper became our new HOA president, running the organization with military efficiency but democratic values. Vernon stayed as treasurer, implementing transparent accounting practices that would make federal auditors weep with joy. Board meetings became actual discussions instead of royal decrees. The Willowbrook Justice Scholarship awarded its first $10,000 grant to to Maria Santos, a single mother from our neighborhood pursuing her paralegal degree. She'd lived in fear of Constance for 3 years before finding the courage to speak at our meeting. Now she's studying HOA law specifically, planning to help other communities fight institutional corruption. But the real transformation was deeper than money or politics. Walking through our neighborhood now feels different. People actually talk to each other. Kids play outside without parents watching nervously for violation notices. Bob Martinez organized block parties that bring together families Constance spent years trying to divide. The news coverage went viral, inspiring other communities to challenge their own corrupt boards. I get emails weekly from residents sharing their HOA horror stories and asking for advice. Jessica Park's investigation won a regional journalism award for exposing systemic housing discrimination. 3 new families have moved into Willowbrook Estates since Constance's removal: the Nguyens, the Washingtons, and the Garcias. Their children play with Emma Williams in yards filled with colorful toys that would have sent our former dictator into apoplectic rage. The sounds of laughter and multiple languages fill air that used to vibrate with fear. My mother visited last month to see the new car and meet the neighbors who'd supported her son's crusade for justice. Mrs. Tessa organized a welcome dinner that turned into an impromptu celebration of everything we'd rebuilt together. Watching my mom laugh with women from 6 different countries, sharing stories over homemade dishes that would have triggered Constance's cooking odor violations, made every moment of the fight worthwhile. The security cameras I'd installed for evidence collection now capture birthday parties and holiday decorations instead of harassment campaigns. My motion sensors trigger on kids playing basketball after 6 p.m., a sound that makes me smile instead of worry. Even Harold seems happier. I see him occasionally at the grocery store looking 10 years younger without Constance's constant supervision. He nods politely, sometimes even manages a genuine smile. Divorce papers were filed 6 months ago. He's building a new life free from the woman who'd turned him into her accomplice. Last week, a young couple toured the house where Marcus Thompson used to live before Constance drove him away. They drive a bright yellow Mustang convertible, exactly the kind of aggressive vehicle that would have sent our former tyrant into orbit. When they asked about the neighborhood association, I told them the truth. We're a community that protects each other instead of policing each other. The smell of Mrs. Tessa's victory cookies still drifts from her kitchen most weekends. The sound of kids playing echoes from the new playground built with recovered embezzlement funds. The sight of my orange Lamborghini in the driveway no longer represents defiance. It represents freedom. Sometimes fighting the system means fixing the system. Sometimes standing up to bullies means giving other people permission to stand up too. Everyone deserves to feel safe and respected in their own neighborhood. Community healing isn't just about punishing the guilty, it's about building.
So here what gets me about the whole Constance situation. She had this thing running for 8 years. 8 years of basically doing whatever she wanted. The pastor, the Hernandez family, Marcus Thompson with his Mustang, they all just pack it up and left rather than deal with her. And why wouldn't they? Who has time for that kind of fight? Most people just want to come home, relax, not get into some drawn-out legal battle with the neighborhood tyrant. But then Diesel showed up with his orange Lamborghini. And I don't know if it was the car that shut her off or just bad timing. But she picked the wrong guy this time. See, the thing about people like Constance is they get comfortable. They start thinking the rules don't apply to them. Approving payment to her husband's fake landscaping company. Threatening board member who ask questions. Eventually that catches up with you. What I keep thinking about is all the families who left before Diesel got there. They probably figured nobody would ever stand up for her. That's it was just how things were in Willowbrook Estate. Makes you wonder how many other neighborhoods are dealing with something similar right now. People just keeping their head down, hoping they don't become the next target. If that sounds familiar to anyone watching, I'll be interested to hear your story. Sometimes just knowing you are not alone makes a difference. There are more stories like this out there. Hit subscribe if you want to hear them.